أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من حمزه ونفخه ونفسه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. The topic I've selected today, suffering in the light of Quran, is I'm using the word suffering sort of generically in the sense that this is suffering which can be physical, it can be emotional, or it can be even intellectual. Suffering can be direct. It is happening to you directly within yourself, within your body, or it could be indirect. It could be coming from some entity. It could be coming from an environment. So, for example, there is a general sense of suffering because of the current environment we are in, be it political or however you want to describe it in this country. In any event, suffering is not a daily event for everybody in the sense that there is a particular event that has happened, but definitely in all our lives, through our lives, there is going to be a suffering. In the Quran, you may see it as suffering per se, azab. In the Quran, you may see it as a test, a trial. So any and all of this comprises in this word suffering. And what I've done here is that how should a Muslim, a good Muslim, when we go into that in particular, should live when he is affected with suffering? So I'm going to spend a little bit of a time in the first section here by talking about what comprises a good Muslim. And this is very important as we go on. So a good Muslim is the one who has attained to a state of taslim. Taslim can be best described as the pinnacle or peak of faith of Islam. This state of taslim is not a passive surrendering to Allah. Rather, it is an active and a conscious surrendering to Allah. So taslim is not just submission to Allah. Taslim is an active thing. It's not just a passive thing. I'm a Muslim, I submit to Allah. No, it is a constant awareness, and you have made that conscious acknowledgement to be surrendering to Allah. That is the state of taslim. And it is very important to realize this, not just for this particular topic, but everything we do as believers. Now, how does the Quran portray this Muslim who is in a full state of taslim? So there are four items I've put out here. There is the absence of inner resistance, and you will see that in Al-Nisa ayat 65. They give themselves up, that is, these Muslims with taslim, they give themselves up to it, to the state of taslim, this in utter self-surrender. Yusallimu tasliman. So when they give themselves up in utter self-surrender, there is the absence of inner resistance. In other words, this state of taslim provides you an absence of inner resistance. There is no resistance inside of you to this surrender. You have already given it up completely. There is the transformation of fear and grief. This is in Al-Baqarah, ayat 112. Yeah, indeed, everyone who surrenders his whole being only to Allah need not have fear, and neither shall they grieve. So the idea of fear and grief is absent. It's transformed into something else. You have totally, utterly surrendered. You are in a state of taslim. Fear and grief, you acknowledge them, but they do not affect you in the sense that you take it upon yourself. What shall I do with this fear? I am so afraid. The grief has afflicted me. What shall I do? No, because ye have completely surrendered. No. You have completely surrendered to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are in a state of taslim. The third thing is there is calmness in the face of crisis. In Al-Ahzab, ayat 22, it says, and all this, the joint forces that are against you, that are advancing against you, only increase their faith and their readiness to total submission to Allah, taslim. So there is calmness in the face of crisis. They were seeing the Confederates advancing against them, but it only increased their faith and their readiness to total submission to Allah. And finally, of course, with that taslim, through your life, your soul is at rest. Nafs al-mutmainna. So these are the factors that appear in the Quran that talk about the full state of taslim for a Muslim. And illustration, let us look at Al-Nisa ayat 65, which I mentioned earlier, which has often been considered as the most defining verse regarding taslim. There are three stages of achieving the state of taslim stated in this ayat. One, there is the acceptance of guidance, turning to Allah or to Prophet's judgment, Sunnah, for direction. So taslim's first stage is acceptance of guidance, be it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Prophet's judgment. Second one is the removal of discomfort, haraj, finding no internal resistance regarding the outcome. Whatever the outcome is, there is no resistance from my inner self. And number three is full submission, taslim, submitting in full, willing submission, yusallimu taslima. Having defined the essence of the meaning of a good Muslim, let us now turn to the topic at hand, suffering, trials, or testing. There are three precepts. One, Islam does not deny suffering. Second, Islam does not minimize suffering. And third, Islam does not romanticize suffering. Outside of Islam, some say suffering is real, but it's meaningless. Others give an opinion that suffering is an external noise to be ignored. Islam maintains that suffering is real, but it is also purposeful. Outside of Islam, those who minimize it say, it's not a big deal, get over it. Others say, suffering is beautiful, the more the better. Islam maintains its reality, but at the same time, it acknowledges the grief while seeking relief and maintaining hope. So, a Muslim recognizes it as a reality. This suffering to me is real, but at the same time, he acknowledges the grief in this way and seeks relief, active relief, and maintains hope. So he is realistic about he needs to seek relief externally, and at the same time, he maintains hope because he's in a state of taslim. He's a full believer, fully in submission, and has surrendered to the will of Allah. So accepting the reality does not take away from him seeking the relief, and it does not take away from him keeping hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in its essence, Islam frames suffering in our lives as it frames every other event, big or small, in a Muslim's life. Now, this is important. Suffering is framed within a moral and a purposeful universe that is exclusively and solely governed by Allah's wisdom, hikmah, and Allah's mercy. There are several things I need to point out again here. Suffering, like anything else in your life, is framed within, that is, you have to recognize that everything I do is amidst a universe that has been created by the Creator, that Creator has not created the universe as a play, but it is a purposeful creation, and that it has a moral perspective to it. It has a moral angle to it. It has a moral side to it. So you take yourself with a suffering, you recognize the creation, you realize there is a creator, you recognize that it's a purposeful creation you are living with, and that this universe that you're living in, which is purposeful, has a moral angle to it. Everything that happens to you, you have to recognize your environment in this form. And finally, that this universe is exclusively and solely governed by Allah's hikmah and governed by Allah's mercy. If you ponder upon this statement, you will realize that you have recognized the purposefulness of your life. You've recognized the purpose, the moral aspect that you need to have in your life, and you do recognize that it is solely governed by only one entity's wisdom and his mercy. So you point to say, okay, he is hikmah, he cannot do anything that is unwise, and he is Rahim, he is Rahman, he cannot ignore what has happened to me without providing me his Rahim. So this statement is a very broad, very deep. One has to be in recognition of this and frame anything, and here we are talking about suffering within this framework. Very important. And I'm talking to people, most of whom have some suffering, maybe many of them have more suffering, many are young, maybe, alhamdulillah, they don't have any suffering. But recognition of this for any event is very important, no matter how old you are, no matter how healthy you are in your physical, mental, or emotional state. This is very profound. This is very important. So, for example, the Stoic pragmatists say, oh, I will be okay because I'm strong enough to handle this. The one in Taslim will say, I will be okay because I'm in the hands of the one who is most wise, most merciful. This, a good Muslim, a complete Muslim, a Muslim in the state of unequivocal Taslim, accepts as fundamental to his faith. This is fundamental to a complete Muslim, to his faith. So, Surah Taghabun, Ayat 11. Asaba min musibatin illa bi'iznillahi wa man yuminu billahi yahdi qalbahu wallahu bikulli shay'in alim. No calamity can ever befall upon a good Muslim unless it is by Allah's leave. Hence, whoever believes in Allah thereby will guide his own heart towards the truth. What is the truth? That no calamity will ever fall upon me unless it is by Allah's will. This is important. This is one ayah telling you how are you going to frame this calamity? And Allah has full knowledge of everything. And you realize that He knows everything. Therefore, He knows what state I am in. And the calamity that has fallen me, it is not there unless it is by His will. He who is full of hikmah, He is who is full of rahmah. Do people think they will ever be left to say we believe and not be tested? This is Al-Ankabut Ayat 2. The Prophet said when Allah loves a servant, He tests him. This is your Prophet. So a good Muslim lives life knowing that being tested by Allah is not being rejected by Allah. Trials and sufferings are to be expected. They are not exceptional. And hardship that arises out of trials and suffering is not proof of Allah's displeasure. Just like ease in life is not proof of Allah's favor. Because you're undergoing hardship, that doesn't mean that you have displeased Allah, necessarily mean that. Just like if you are in a state of ease in your life, it is not proof that you are in Allah's favor. Both of these things apply. One must recognize that, realize that, and look therefore at one's hardship in that positive way. So let us then further unpack the topic of trials, tribulations, suffering, call it what you will, in the light of Quran. 1. Suffering purify and elevate the believing sufferer. Suffering purifies and elevates the believing sufferer. Ultimately, his soul returns to Allah, purified and elevated. Know that suffering in Islam is never meaningless. It erases sins. It raises your spiritual rank. It weans the heart from false attachments. When in suffering, when in test, you realize what are your true attachments, what are your false attachments, what have you been attaching yourself to, and you find that was false. Some people you have known, you find they're not good friends. So it takes from the heart the false attachments. Reality dawns on you as to what your true attachments are. And it awakens humility. You realize that you're not sufficient unto yourself. It awakens that humility, and for a good Muslim, he realizes again, once again, how dependent he is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is never meaningless. No suffering, small or big, is ever meaningless. No fatigue, no illness, no sorrow, no sadness, no harm, no distress befalls a good Muslim, even a thorn that pricks him, except that Allah erases some of Muslims' sins by it. This is both in Bukhari and Muslim. So it refers to this, erases sins. So the goal here, mind, in suffering is not comfort. The goal is nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. True comfort for a purified, elevated soul resides in nearness to Allah. You take this discomfort, you take this suffering, and you say that my comfort in this suffering is not going to be a comfort as I know it. It is going to be how close have I come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 2, sabr. For a complete Muslim, sabr is a strength, but it is a moral strength, and it is an active strength. It is not, oh, I'll do sabr and leave it at that. No. You will establish a moral strength, a strength which increases your moral stance. And it is going to be an active event. It is going to be an active process. You're not going to just say, oh, I'll be, I will exercise sabr and be done with it. No. It is an active moral strength. So sabr is not silence in the face of injustice. Suffering, you're undergoing suffering because of what is happening in Gaza. Silence is not silence in the face of that injustice is not sabr. Sabr is not emotional numbness, you're just emotionally frozen. No, it is an active strength. It is a moral strength. You cannot have either if you've just rendered yourself emotionally numb. In other words, sabr is not passive resignation. You are not resigned to your state of suffering. It is active. What shall I do about it? How do I bring myself close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There is no resignation there. There is activity there. Sabr is restraint from despair. Despair is a shirk because you have given up hope. If you give up hope, that means you do not recognize the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life. So, sabr is restraint from despair. Sabr is perseverance and obedience to Allah. You do not lose your sense of obedience to Allah, you persevere in it. That is what sabr is. Sabr is maintaining one's dignity under hardship. It could be physical hardship, it could be a mental hardship, it could be a hardship that has come from externally. It could be a hardship that has grown from within. You maintain your dignity in it. Normally we find when we are approaching or we are in old age, we say, Ya Allah, help me maintain my dignity. Yeah, we are pretty much here talking about your physical dignity. Let me go out from this world with dignity. Yes, there is that dignity, but dignity takes its shape in many ways. It manifests in many ways. Show your dignity even if you are not in hardship, but particularly when you are hardship, show your dignity. Remain dignified. Remain dignified in your prayer to the extent you can, and what have you. Your dignity remains with you through your suffering. That is what sabr is. O you who have attained to faith, seek help. Oh, seek help in steadfast patience and prayer, for behold, Allah is with those who are patient in adversity. Allah is with those who are patient in adversity. And Allah here is talking about the patience that is a strength, that is an active, not just passive. Now notice what it says, that particular ayat. It says, seek help. Allah commands us to seek help. And then it says, Allah is with those who are patient in adversity. This is Allah's promise. In this ayah, Allah makes a command, seek help. But in this very ayat, Allah promises. He promises what? He is with you if you're patient in adversity. One ayat commands something, seek help. And same ayat promises you something. Allah is with you. The complete Muslim takes in the suffering without abandoning prayer, ethics, or his trust in Allah. Number 3, tawakkul. Trust in Allah without giving up your responsibility. Tawakkul is trust in Allah, but that does not mean that you live and then that's it. You have to maintain your responsibility. And whoever places his trust in Allah, Allah alone is sufficient for him. This trust in Allah, Allah is sufficient for you, but it does not abdicate you from your own responsibility. Tawakkul in suffering means that you act with full effort. Tawakkul is an active trust in Allah. Tawakkul means you do not tie your worth, the extent of your efforts, for example, the extent of your efforts in suffering, to the results you get, the outcome. The extent of your efforts are part of your dealing with suffering. The outcome that you get is not within your hands. You don't conjoin these two together. So you accept outcomes without bitterness. That is tawakkul. The Prophet tied his camel. Remember, the Prophet tied his camel, all the while putting his trust in Allah. He had trust in Allah, but he did not let the camel just go there, because he realized that if he doesn't do what is needed, what is his responsibility, the camel may go away somewhere. This is real tawakkul. You have trust in Allah. You know the outcome is with Him. In your suffering, you know the outcome is with Him. You don't accept outcomes. You accept outcomes without bitterness. You make an effort, but the outcome is not with you. So he tied his camel. He put his trust in Allah. When he came back, and if the camel was not there, he said the outcome was not within me, but the effort, responsibility was with me. So tawakkul is trust in Allah, but not relinquishing at the same time your responsibility. Number 4, lamenting, bewailing, Hay Allah, main pit gaya, being full of sorrows. Lamenting is permitted, but despair is not. You are a human being, you have a suffering, whatever it is, suffering from externally, suffering because of your children, suffering because of what is happening around the world, suffering because of what mind has been going through, so any kind of suffering. And it is human for us to lament, to bewail, to cry. It is permitted, but despair is not. You do not despair of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if you despair, that means you have given up the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran records even prophets weeping, praying, and pleading. Hazrat Yaqub, it is only to Allah that I complain of my deep grief and my sorrow. Ayub, indeed adversity has touched me, O Allah, but you are the most merciful of the merciful. Islam allows grief. Islam allows you to grieve, but Islam directs this grief toward Allah, not away from Allah. One does not drown oneself in one's own grief, thereby not bringing Allah into the picture, so to say. Rather, one pleads with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one's grief directly to Allah. In other words, you are expressing this grief, and the grief is toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is Allah you are directing your problem toward. It is not that you get so drowned in your grief that you have turned away from Allah. Grief needs to be turned toward the Allah, not away from Allah. Number 5, this is all a good Muslim, a Muslim with a taslim is for. Justice may be deferred. Indeed, it is deferred, but it is never denied. You, as a Muslim with taslim, know that. It may be deferred, it is not denied. Islam is explicit. This world is not the final court of justice. On that day, every soul will be paid in full for what it has earned. Al-Imran, ayat 25. A good Muslim may be denied full justice in dunya, but never in al-akhirah. Recognize justice may be deferred. Indeed, it is deferred, but it is never denied. The Prophet is the model in the state of suffering. Look at this model for us. No human endured more suffering in dunya than him. He was born an orphan. He was further orphaned with his mother dead, his guardian uncle dead within the next several years. As a prophet, he was mocked. As a prophet, he was exiled. As a prophet, he was attacked. As a prophet, he was betrayed. He lost 3 sons and 3 daughters during his lifetime. This is your prophet. This is your model in the state of suffering. Look at the extent of his suffering and then say to yourself, where is my suffering within the framework of this prophet, the most perfect individual's suffering? Yet, he said, how amazing is the affair of the believer. If harm touches him, he is patient, and that is good for him. With all this suffering, this man says, look at the affair of the believer, the true believer. Harm touches him, he is patient, and that is good for him. And that is precisely what he practiced. Goodness in Islam, in other words, is proven under pressure. Your goodness is tested, and your goodness is proven under pressure. So here are daily practices for living this way. The following are grounded, realistic practices. They are not idealized abstractions, mind you. Morning intention. Niyyah. Every morning, quietly say in however language, in whatever words you want, "O Allah, whatever comes today, help me meet it with dignity, with patience, and trust in you." You can say this in a state of good health, physical, mental, emotional, but particularly in the event of a suffering. Morning intention, "O Allah, whatever comes today, help me meet it with dignity, with patience, and with trust in you." This niyyah frames your hardship as an encounter, as an active encounter, not an ambush, not passive. What are you quietly doing the niyyah? Whatever comes today, whatever hardship comes today, I shall meet it active. I shall encounter it with dignity, patience, and trust, not as a passive. Oh, again this morning, oh, I'm deluded with this. I am here with this suffering. What shall I do with it? No. Encounter it and remember it's the dignity, it's the patience, it's the trust with which you are encountering it. You're not dealing with in a passive manner. Number 2, name this test, the suffering. What is it? But do not name it as a punishment. In other words, say what is wrong with you, what is eating you, what is your suffering, physical, moral, emotional, mental, but don't say it as if it's a punishment for you. So when something painful happens, say, "Qaddar Allah wa ma sha fa'ala." Allah has decreed and He does what He wills. Allah has decreed this suffering. He does what He wills, and you don't take it as a punishment because you brought in the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into it. You have named it, "This I have, this Allah has decreed, He does what He wills." And you don't take it as a punishment. This is not a punishment upon you. This protects your heart from self-blame. You do not start the day and name this test as a punishment and self-blame yourself. You flagellate yourself, your heart, or you are resentful. No, you see that this is resentment from divine. This is not a divine resentment. This is not you for self-blame. What you're doing is you're acknowledging it, but you're not taking it as a punishment. You're saying, this is what it is. This is what Allah has decreed. And this is happening because He wills it that way. I'm not going to self-blame myself, nor am I going to be resentful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pray on time, especially when it feels hard. You are undergoing a hardship. You feel it is really hard to pray. That is when you pray on time. Hardship tempts people to withdraw from prayer. Do the opposite. I realize for each person, for each one of us, our suffering is our own. We know what our hardship is, but we have recognized that there is this prayer. We know that sometimes it feels very hard in the event of an ongoing suffering. That is the time you do the opposite. You do the prayer. You seek help through patience and prayer, says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even a bare minimum prayer outside of rituals anchors the soul to Allah. Remember, it's getting closer to Allah. It's nearness to Allah. You've thrown away your false attachments. You've thrown away your arrogance. You have been humbled and you have realized how dependent you are on Allah. Prayer anchors your soul back to Allah. Number 4, practice controlled lamenting. You feel like crying, you feel like lamenting, you feel like pleading like Ayub, like Yaqub. Speak plainly to Allah. Ya Allah, this hurts. Ya Allah, I'm afraid. Ya Allah, I don't understand. But always end with, Ya Allah, do not leave me to myself. Remember the nearness to Allah. Ya Allah, do not leave me to myself. You can plead with Allah the way the prophets did. But you always end with, Ya Allah, do not leave me to myself. This mirrors your prophet's supplication. Your prophet did this. In all his sufferings, in all his state of sufferings, he wanted the nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's pleading away, lamenting. And then he says, please, Ya Allah, do not leave me to myself. Perform one act of goodness daily. Okay, you're in a state of suffering, agony. Perform one act of goodness daily, no matter how small, regardless of your mood. So whether it's a message of encouragement you send to somebody, whether it's a bit of a charity of time, of wisdom, of wealth, whether you maintain a kind restraint, somebody has done something to you, and you are maintaining a kind restraint, you are reacting to it, but you're doing it in a kind way. You forgive someone, whether that person is with you, before you, that person is in this dunya or other dunya. You commit an act of forgiveness. You maintain silence instead of verbal retaliation. You know, when you're in a state of suffering, it is very easy to get angry with someone, particularly with your spouse. You maintain silence instead of verbal retaliation. Any and all of these acts or more can be done very easily with minimum effort, but you have to perform an act of goodness daily. Remember, these are practical daily practices for living in this way. Taking it broadly, these things one can internalize when there is no suffering, when there is no such event. But particularly in suffering, you do this, you reach out this. What is here the intent? Getting near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the only one you have realized in this event of suffering that you can depend on. Everything else has fallen apart. Depending upon yourself has fallen apart. Depending upon false attachments, fallen apart. Reality has dawned on you. You are trying to get closer to Allah. Perform one act of goodness, regardless of your mood. This preserves moral agency. Hardship in suffering should not freeze your goodness. It is difficult. It is extremely difficult. But your moral agency has to be with you. It's hardship. But maintain the dignity to ensure that it does not freeze your goodness. And in the evening, do muhasabah. Ask 3 questions nightly. Did I maintain my character today? Did I turn toward Allah or did I turn away from Him? Did suffering make me more harder or did suffering make me humble? Very quick questions, okay? But remember, there is no judgment here. You're not doing musabaha because you want to judge yourself here. No. All you're doing is rendering yourself aware. You just render yourself aware at the end of the day. Did I maintain my character? Don't judge. Did I turn toward Allah? Don't judge. Did suffering make me harder or more humble? Don't judge. You're not in a state of judgment here. You're doing this at the end of the evening so that the next morning, if Allah wills to give you this next morning, you remember that these things you have to go through today, your character, you're turning toward Allah, and you're getting more humble. Again, the intent is you're trying to draw close to Allah. Remember the temporary nature of the world, of this world. Repeat often, this is not my final home. The Prophet said, be in this world as though you were a stranger or a traveler. Remember the temporary nature of this world. This is not the be-all. This is what taslim is all about. This is what surrendering is all about. Recognizing the temporal aspect of the life you're living in this dunya. When you say that, you're acknowledging the presence of hereafter. When you say that, you realize that judgment is deferred. It's not never going to happen. You're acknowledging that. You're a traveler here. Pain feels lighter when it is not mistaken for permanence. Yes, all seems that this is dunya is all is. All pain seems that this is a permanent pain. But a good Muslim, a Muslim in full state of taslim, realizes that he has surrendered to that entity who he says has told you there is resurrection, there is that day, there is the day where the justice will be just by him, and so the justice will be given to you in the afterworld if it is not given to you here. It is not permanent. And stay connected to righteous company. Islam does not expect solitary endurance. A believer to another believer is like a building, strengthening one another. That's the Sahih Bukhari. It's isolation during suffering amplifies the suffering. Isolation in the community distributes it. So stay connected to righteous company. Whether it's the company of your spouse, whether it's the company of your family, whether it's the company of your friends, whether it's the company of your acquaintance, whether you do it personally, whether you do it by way of an email, a phone, pick up the phone, it amplifies your suffering. It does not amplify your suffering, it distributes it. This is. So here's a closing Islamic insight, and I've maintained that before, mentioned it before. Just remember that. In Islam, hardship is not evidence that you've failed in this life. Just as goodness is not proven by ease in life. Whenever you are in a hardship, think of the goodness and say to yourself, in hardship does not mean that I have failed. And when you have goodness, say to yourself, this goodness does not prove that I'm in Allah's favor. Remember this. So, here is just one final simple daily practice. Choose one dua. Any of the things that I've said here, choose one dua and repeat it after each salah. Every day, choose one dua. Repeat it after each salah and or during walking, during driving, or before sleep. What is it? It's consistency. You've taken one simple dua and you're consistent with it. In suffering, this becomes even more important. Consistency matters more than variety. For this day, one dua, repeat it through after each salah, during walking, driving, before sleep. Don't need variety, just one dua. The Prophet taught that dua is not merely changing the outcomes. Dua is as much also for keeping the heart alive while outcomes are unfolding. You're not doing a dua to change the outcomes. Remember, we mentioned all this before. But dua is also for keeping your heart alive while that outcome which you do not know is opening up. It's unfolding. Okay. May our supplications never cease. Here are some duas from Quran and Sunnah. I'm not going to go through it. But if you have this recording, then you can look at this. And of course, most of them you're familiar with. So I needed to just get this particular subject of suffering, sort of bring it into a certain focus, recognizing that ultimately the suffering is for everyone, because we realize that the test, the suffering, the trials are a part of our acknowledgement in the state of taslim. Brother Mamdu, if you'll be kind enough to go ahead and do the dua.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك يا ربنا تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وبفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك أعلي كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, purify our hearts, strengthen our faith, increase our knowledge, and make us benefit from what you have taught us. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, make their graves garden from heaven and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, we have many of our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, grant to all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. Oh Allah, grant us the power and the ability that we may be grateful for the favors you have bestowed upon us and our parents, and that we may do righteous deeds that are pleasing to you. Oh Allah, we seek from you all of the good, whether we know it or we don't. And we seek your refuge from all evil, whether we know it or we don't. Oh Allah, we seek refuge in you from incapacity, from laziness, from fear, from greed, from poverty, and from the torment of the grave. Oh Allah, we have many of our brethren who are living under oppression and injustice. Oh Allah, heal their trauma, protect their helpless, and grant them lasting peace and prosperities. Oh Allah, we ask with every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.